Welcome to the Trailbreaker Podcast. I'm Aaron Feinberg. In this podcast, I explore what it takes to be a trailbreaker. Through intimate conversations with people carving new paths across the landscapes of business, art, and sport, we dig in on how to excel across seemingly disparate endeavors. What drives people who manage to succeed multidimensionally? Is it how they think? Is it meticulous planning and follow-through? Or is it some measure of delusional optimism? My guest today is Alex Yoder, co-founder and CEO of Overview Coffee and a Patagonia Snowboarding Ambassador. He's committed to tangible environmental activism, human connection, and harnessing the quiet power that comes from being a shy kid. We talked about his transition from anti-establishment snowboarder to CEO, why it's a privilege to be in a position to care, and why it's important to be mindful about how you participate in commerce. Hey, Alex, how are you?
Hey, Aaron, I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. And thanks so much for joining the program. It's great to have you on.
It's good to be here. It's good to see you again.
So where are you right now? I know you've been splitting time between Wyoming and Portland, and I think also occasionally some California time. So where are you right now?
I'm currently in Wyoming, downtown Jackson.
Fantastic. And is that where you're going to be for the winter?
Yeah, I'll be based here for the entirety of the winter. No real travel plans this winter for pretty obvious reasons, but yeah, it's good to be back, and it's definitely pretty snowy. So
yeah, the COVID kibosh has put everybody as just travel in limbo, but you landed in a good spot. Jackson Hole in the wintertime is kind of like no other.
yeah, no, I mean, in a lot of ways, Jackson is a geographic location that's pretty insulated from the world's problems. So it's a nice place to be in general.
Except for when the 700 million tourists come through in the summertime to watch buffalo.
That's true. Get too close to the buffalo.
So how's this landing in Jackson for the winter working with your new coffee company, Overview Coffee, in as far as it goes to being able to run that from Wyoming?
So yeah, Overview is a project that has come to life in the last 6 months, but it's been sort of in the ideation phase for a couple of years, and it's it's interesting because it does kind of take me away from home. Our base of operations is in Portland. That's where we're roasting all of the coffee, packaging, and shipping. But because of growing up in Jackson and the sort of community and connections I have here, we're actually doing the bulk of our sales in Jackson. So I can actually keep up with a lot of the business that we have going by being here. So I don't know if I unintentionally set it up that way or if I just sort of happened into that structure. But yeah, it works out pretty well because I can split my time, be in Portland predominantly in the summer and here predominantly in the winter. At least I think that's how it's going to go. This is sort of year one, so feeling it all out. But yeah, I have two partners in the business, and they're both based in Portland. So I have all the faith in the world that they can keep the ship afloat and I can be out here and things will work.
Keep your customers in Jackson satisfied, get some customer reviews. And as someone who's drank the coffee, it is delicious. So thank you for all that you are doing, both for my morning ritual as well as for the environment.
It's an honor.
So in terms of why Portland, what was the impetus for basing out of there, roasting, distribution, etc.?
Yeah, so the Portland decision was made on a few factors. One, most coffee is shipped via sea freight. So, Portland being the land of ports, it seemed like a good opportunity to just cut down on shipping. So we were looking at, the Los Angeles area, the Bay Area, Portland, and Seattle kind of as options to base the roasting facility and the business out of. And it turns out Portland is the most affordable West Coast city. And it also happens to be a very collaborative city for small business. It's, the culture there really supports entrepreneurship, startups, and especially sort of in the food sector. There's so many independent food businesses that have come from Portland and done well. And the local community just really supports people trying to do something new, especially when it's, a company that is planning and committed to benefiting the environment. So yeah, Portland made sense for a number of reasons, and it's not too far from Jackson. So
What when you say supporting, what does that actually look like from a brand new business? I mean, I get how a town can show up and be customers and be excited about something brand new, but what about Portland at the government level or at the law level or even maybe deeper on the customer level makes it such a spot to feel supported?
well, Portland's pretty interesting. It's the I feel like the culture there is pretty anti-corporate in some senses. So like, the a large majority of the community shops with their values. People are very committed to how they participate in commerce. So I think that lends itself to companies that have a bit more of a, value-based backbone. Um, so, I mean, for instance, our one of my partners in the business, Trevin Miller, is our roaster and our chief of operations. And we met him because he is the owner of a collective coffee roasting facility where he owns a roaster and a warehouse, and multiple coffee shops and cafes that roast their own coffee utilize that roaster, and do all of their production in this sort of shared space. So we actually met him because we hired him to teach us how to roast. and, and so it's, that's not an easy thing to find in every city. As a guy who's so committed to roasting coffee, he wants to share that skill and teach other people how to do it, and also create a space for small cafes to sort of lower their overhead by not having to buy a roaster.
Amazing. And your role at the company is what?
I am the chief executive officer, Aaron.
Well, you don't say. Look at you.
It's yeah, I almost have, I think some people call it imposter syndrome. I just sort of yeah, being a professional snowboarder for so many years, and that uh life pursuit being somewhat anti-establishment, to bear the title CEO is a little weird. It's a tough pill for me to swallow, but it's all with good intention, so I'm behind it.
You got it out of your mouth fairly smoothly this time, so it's obvious it's starting to stick.
Yeah.
What was that transition like? Well, I guess let me start with this. Is this your first business that you are creating from the ground up?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I can look at my career as a snowboarder as an entrepreneurial venture as well. There's a lot that I've just sort of, you know, um, imagined and brought to life with the help of the brands that support me as a snowboarder. And, I'm speaking about creating documentary films and things of that nature, where I'd, seen it done, but never done it, but sort of knew how the pieces to the puzzle fit together and brought those things to life. And so, yeah, I mean, functionally, this is the first business I've created. The transition is, it's interesting. I've never spent this much time on a computer before, aside from editing photos and sort of, catching up on emails from time to time. Like, this is a much more committed sort of role in keeping things going. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's so many different routes I could sort of, or ways I can answer that question. But
Well, that's fine. We'll dig in and it'll all come out
yeah,
if it's supposed to. With with it known, anybody who studies small business or talks to anybody in business, it is that sort of mindset. You've got to commit. You've got to be willing to throw everything into it, both energetically, financially, uh, time wise. But you've got your life split between still being a professional athlete in the winter and also running an upstart coffee company. And so have you been able to create an existence where you're not constantly going at all hours of the day, or does that old sort of rule fall true for you, meaning like are you just fried all the time right now, or have you figured out some sort of magic bullet to keep it a little more balanced?
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think about that and to find the ways to sort of smooth the bumpy road, if you will. But I think, being a snowboarder and pursuing that path, I've developed and just growing up skateboarding and doing all these like risk associated sports, like I've developed a pretty high tolerance for risk. Um, and also like a lot of the snowboarding I do, it's, self-supported and human powered. So I'm spending 8 hours sometimes like walking up a mountain, and then the run down is like 2 minutes, So I kind of have that philosophy in mind when it comes to business. Like I know it's going to be a lot of work to gain a little bit of traction. And so I'm balancing these things by just the, working when obviously I have to, but it's really exciting because I want to. So I'm finding times like, if I'm snowboarding during the day, I can still get 5 hours of work in the evening and not be totally fried because it's one, I'm diving into a totally new world that I don't know as intimately as I know sort of the outdoor industry and the mountains and, this world that I've been of for the majority of my life. And coffee is just a whole new world, and there's a lot for me to learn. So I'm pretty, stimulated by what I am able to participate in with this new venture. So I think that's really keeping it exciting.
Yeah, it doesn't always feel like work, and I think that cliche is true
Mhm.
when you're on a path that you've defined and is really your path. So, given what you've experienced so far with this venture, what would you say would be the an unexpected awesome bonus of doing this that you would not have been able to describe before? And then what's sort of your biggest pet peeve, or your if you had your Alex Yoder magic wand, you could wave it and make that thing disappear?
Yeah, I guess, what was the first part? Sorry, how would you
It
repeat
never
that? I'm
helps when
sorry.
the interviewer asks you more than one question. Sorry about that.
Mm,
What
that's okay.
what would you say your most surprising positive or benefit from starting this coffee company? Like, something that you are like, wow, this is awesome, that you would not have been able to predict about being a business owner.
Yeah, I've been amazed and humbled by the amount of support I've felt from just my friend group, my community, people who I don't even know but follow me on Instagram, that see this venture as like an inspiring pursuit or an example of leveraging one's sort of opportunities in life or privilege or however you sort of describe having a stable enough foundation as a person who's had success in one thing to then go on and pursue another thing with that tolerance for risk. I think yeah, I've just had so much like love. There's a few people that are our first subscribers, that are, it's really funny because between the three of us that founded this business, it's really my network that is our customer base
Mm.
right now. So all the orders that come through, not all of them, but a lot of them are, names I recognize or members of my family or, my snowboarding family. And yeah, that belief in, what I am pursuing and what I'm sort of seeking to create is really inspiring.
Yeah, having that authentic brand, the values, the things that sort of emanate off of you, and you get to spend time with you, it has filtered in to the way that your company looks and feels, and you guys have done a good job on the marketing and on the branding. And I know that it had been, I think it had been something else. It had been called something else before, and watching what it turned into as overview, it feels super super tight and super clean as a connection to you. And so I think that's such an important thing, is to figure out who you are and then to stay with that. And I feel like that, in knowing you as a person, knowing you as an athlete, knowing you as a filmmaker, and knowing you as now a business person, you don't feel like you're talking to somebody different, when you're in those different scenarios, which I think is super core, and people need to really pay attention to that. And I guess, is that something you are very conscious about and do on purpose, or is it a little bit more just in the way you approach life, your flow, and just the things you're gravitating towards just organically?
Yeah, I guess I haven't really broken that down so much or thought that much about it, but I think I do have a pretty um, sort of solidified value set or sort of moral compass. And so I do filter, everything I do, every brand that I work with, every sort of pursuit or story that I want to tell. It definitely goes through that filter, and I want to, you know, um, not compromise my values or my integrity in any way or any aspect of my life. So I'm quite particular and sensitive, and I can't help but just do things the way that feel right. Like if it feels off, I can't be a part of it. I even if it's a financial opportunity or something, I'm just, if it goes sort of against the grain of the way I feel and what feels right to me, I'm just not open to it.
Makes sense. And you have a particular energy about you, that's soft spoken, peaceful, thoughtful, obviously talented across a bunch of different realms. One thing I'm curious about is to pull off some of the things that you do, whether it's risky stuff in the mountains, or risk in business, throwing big dollars at something. Often what we see in other parts of pop culture, et cetera, is that person who's really got that edge, that grit, that like kind of in your face explosive thing. And you have that output, like you produce that. But is that a switch you have that you turn on inside that only you can see? Or do you just approach it from an entirely different way to sort of peak perform, and it maybe feels inside to you the way that I just described it, just more easeful, flowy, but still at, 199 miles an hour?
First of all, thank you. It's very complimentary. Yeah, I for a while in my sort of early foray into professional snowboarding, I've realized, I think at age 13 or 12, that people got paid to ride snowboards. And at that point, it was my favorite thing to do. And I said, well, if people get paid to ride snowboards, I'm going to get paid to ride snowboards. And so there was a pretty obvious path of, how to get paid to ride snowboards. And it really sort of consisted of doing sort of progressing what you could do physically on a snowboard year over year and being very impressive with those tricks. Um, and that that path that I'd seen, like the beaten path to be a pro snowboarder, it took a pretty aggressive attitude. Like you had to face a lot of fears. You had to like get pumped up and go huge off some jumps, and that's sort of like this identity that I got consumed by, and all the while in those years that I was starting to sort of gain traction in that career and sort of like build my name, if you will, I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was chasing this persona of what I perceived to be the only route for a professional athlete. And I think that sort of in some ways relates to what you're asking in terms of, you know, the general persona of someone who's like out there, like making change, like getting it, like being successful, is someone who's maybe holding their phone and filming themselves giving people advice around like seizing the day and, you know, like taking every chance you get to make $1, whatever it is. And um and i i just sort of literally and figuratively hit a wall. Like I had a crash where I came up short on this gap jump, um, and I hit my jaw and my knee, and I had this really bad concussion. And at that point, I started to really question this path and sort of ask myself, you know, critically, should I keep doing this? And I don't know if it was luck or serendipity or fate or what it was, but I found myself in Japan the following year. And I met this group of snowboarders who are um, so fundamentally different as, you know, snowboard professionals than everything I'd ever known. And their pursuit in snowboarding is really focused on the act of turning the snowboard, like the simplest act. You know, it's very much in line with certain like Buddhist or Zen philosophies, where you can gain as much joy out of, you know, watching waves crash in the ocean as you can by trying to ride them. Um, so I think, I don't know, it was just profound when I actually found myself among these people who I felt more energetically connected with or on the same page as, that I sort of, without sounding too corny or like a storybook, I sort of like found myself in that. Um, and from that point on, I felt like I was really able to harness that quiet power, and sort of be more okay with that being my path in life and my way of walking, versus trying to just emulate what existed to gain success.
How does that all roll into getting comfortable with that CEO title and how you want to run this coffee company?
Yeah, I mean, I think timing's on my side as well. You know, like this era is a lot different. I think there's a lot more. There's a lot of work to do in terms of accessibility and into business and into, you know, a lot of different areas of our society. But for me to feel comfortable, um, you know, standing up and saying I'm a CEO of a business, it just doesn't feel that weird anymore. I feel like you know, my generation, the one below me, I'm 31 years old, born in 89, so just barely scratched out of the 80s. Um, yeah, I think my generation is, you know, one of the first that's been told if you set your mind to something, you can make it a reality. And I think, you know, the life as a snowboarder, it really teaches you that too. Like you literally lay in bed at night and think about this thing that you could do with your body in the air and like how it would feel. And the next day you strap the board on your feet and you go and hit a jump and you try that, and sometimes you just land it, you know. So there's this kind of dream it, do it, um, mentality that has been burned into my existence. And um, so yeah, I think I'm comfortable taking the risk and pursuing something that's outside of my comfort zone, only because I believe it's possible.
Smart words. You know, you got to think it, and then you have to have the courage to move your feet, and then you have to have the commitment to follow your path and tune out what everybody else thinks you should be doing. And with this company, it's how many people now?
There are technically 4 people, 3 co-founders, and then a good friend of mine who's doing all of our creative direction. He's doing the branding, packaging, and everything that has to do with the sort of brand imagery.
And obviously what I'm about to ask might not be super relevant yet because of the size of the company. And so, take it however you want to, but when you think about how you want to lead this company, and I don't mean the values around overview and what it stands for, but assuming you have 10, 20, 50 people working for you, what do you want to show up as a leader? And, I think when you were talking about your generation and, and a lot of the folks I get to work with at some of these big companies and even some of the young leaders moving up, there's been a fantastic swing in the tides of the leadership set of skills and the competencies. It's like it's not just that person screaming in the front and demanding and inspiring and etc. It's all different shapes and styles of leadership and of personality, and it has to be a fit, right? It's got to be the right fit for that company and the right leader for the people that you hired. So just thinking about that big old broad topic as it pertains to also who you are as a person, and how do you think you're going to lead?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's been so, this sort of dive into entrepreneurship has been so um, improvisational. I'm definitely figuring it out as I go. But when I think about as I sort of grow into this CEO role and I'm forced to learn how to be a leader of an organization because it's something I haven't done before. I've sort of fallen into leadership roles in these productions of films and on certain trips and things. And I feel like I'm capable of sort of seeing what the objective is and getting everyone on board and to work toward a common goal. But I have, I've been a part of a lot of companies, and Patagonia specifically is a company that I'm very close to and have worked with for about a decade. And so I've seen how large companies operate. And so I've definitely spent a lot of time thinking about, okay, what does this look like when there's 100 employees at Overview? How does this expand? And I do really want it to be an organization where, we don't have this top-down flow chart with, this sort of typical organizational structure of, um, yeah, like the hierarchy, right? I think there's obviously a place for that, and there needs to be people that um, answer to other people or people that guide other people. But I really want the organization to feel like we're all standing in a circle and we're looking toward the goal that's in the middle, and we're standing next to each other and we're working together, sort of on the same playing field, on the same plane. And I think that's what a value-driven business can really cultivate. And I've noticed that at Patagonia. It's, some people accuse it of being cult-like, but I think if any cult's goal is to preserve and protect the habitat that survives all of us, then sure, I'm cool with it.
That's
So
a cult. That's a cult I'd like to be in.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think, for me, it's really, um, it's imperative that I truly live the values of the company values that, I've, um, as you've talked about, sort of like embodied inherently, but translating that into text and into imagery and into, these sort of morals that people can be a part of and feel a part of, and feel supported by, and motivated by. I think that's going to be, the real challenge, because I also sort of um, thrive on subtlety. and I can't, I can't expect everyone to necessarily just get it, um, with a nudge and a nod, So I think um, being able to sort of synthesize these morals and these values of the business and make it memorable and um, exciting for people to be a part of is really important.
Yeah, well, you're in a good spot because one of the things that is required of a founder or CEO is the willingness to take the leap and to operate with very limited information, to the belief that you can make it happen, that you've got the grit and the risk tolerance. And so a lot of this stuff can get figured out, including, you may wind up being in a position where you grow your skill sets and capacities beyond what you could even imagine now, or you might realize that your secret sauce should remain in its sort of pure form, and you'll put people around you, right? You'll put a right hand man or woman next to you, or someone just underneath you that fills in those gaps that your organization will need. And I think what you said earlier about having a structure of the company that feels like everybody's in it together, and it's a circle, etc., and it immediately made me think of what your company's all about, which is very much that. We are a coffee company. We're all in this together. We've got to take care of the earth. We are a part of it. It's a big circle. We've got to what we do and matters to the earth. What we put in us matters, and the whole process matters. And I think that's yeah, keeping that peppered through the whole growth of this thing, it'll be really important.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, that's, I think that's a good way to sort of perceive how we need to act together to combat the climate crisis, and the way that we are allowing commerce to sort of drive the degradation of our planet. It's we have to think of it as this shoulder to shoulder project. We're all in this together, whether we're halfway across the world, whether, we can speak each other's language or not. It's really important to sort of adhere to those values. And for a lot of us, in the position to care and be an environmentalist, that's a privilege in itself. And most of the people who are feeling the immediate effects of, the developed world's commercial exploits, are the people that um, are doing things like growing our coffee. It's there's an amazing sort of divide or imbalance in the developed and the developing world. And, in the context of coffee, and this is something that's been so fascinating to me, is, 90 something, like 95%, let's say, it's probably mid to high 90s of coffee that's grown is shipped out of its origin. So most of that coffee is going to the USA, Europe, Japan, Scandinavia, right? And most of it's grown in Central America, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia. Um, so a lot of these farmers, that are producing this delicious coffee that, we are buying and roasting, have never even tasted it. And so for us to be in this position to start a business in the United States of America, in the developed world, and create a system that gives back, that considers the impact of climate change on these farmers, the fact that they could lose their farm with an extreme weather event that is caused by climate change,
Hmm.
like demonstrably, like it's scientifically proven. So that to me is sort of what drives this philosophy, and really what I think about in this pursuit is, it is truly a privilege to care, to be in a place to care and to create a business that is trying to help is an amazing privilege. So
As you were talking earlier about finding or refining yourself from your early days as a pro or as a snowboarder, going from sort of a little more aggro back to
yeah.
maybe who you are now, made me think of this other question, which is, have you always cared like this? Y- you know, it's it's palatable and awesome, and is it something you've developed and cultivated over time, just through the things you've experienced, or have you been like this since you were little, and it's just what you've cared about has just shifted a little bit?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I the stories I'm told, and I don't have a ton of memories from childhood. I don't know if it has to do with the concussions or if it's just the way um, my brain works or what. But I know I was a really shy kid, and my parents talked about they called me like a little Buddha when I was a baby, and I was very peaceful. And but I remember my childhood and adolescence like being very shy, and so I think if I take personality tests or kind of dive into that world, I'm like the individualist or an introvert or however those show up. And so I guess in some ways I've always been sort of sensitive, and maybe that's lent itself to finding this path. But I remember specifically speaking or answering your question more directly. And when I was 16, I was really motivated to somehow get sponsored by Volcom, because I just thought Volcom was the coolest. It's like youth against establishment. It's this very core, like surf, skate, snow brand. And I was talking to my dad one night, and I was telling him like, oh, I might have this contact at Volcom. I think I'm gonna like, maybe get some gear. And um, he suggested that I think about working with a company like Patagonia. It's like, what about Patagonia? They have great values. They make great stuff. I think he made a joke about getting him free fishing waders.
Have you gotten him fishing waders yet?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good.
Yeah. He's decked out. People poke fun at us because we kind of like have the same clothes. Um, but yeah, I think that 16-year-old me grew up a lot by the time I joined Patagonia when I was 21, and I'd sort of read a few books in that time about the destruction of the planet based on short-term profits, and sort of how things have naturally sort of evolved. Like I find it so fascinating when a good example is when plastic was invented and started to be widely utilized. It was a miracle. Yeah, here's this like film that we can make out of oil. That's something we're already pulling out of the ground, and we can um, preserve food with it, and you can see through it, and like it's disposable and lightweight, and you can ship products in it. This is great, right? Obviously, it took not that much time, a few decades, to realize how impactful it was in a negative way, but that's how things happen, in evolution, and especially with this, massive population of creatures with opposable thumbs and big brains and large ambitions. It's we can't help but get ourselves into some sticky situations. So yeah, I mean, without too much elaboration, I think I've sort of naturally evolved into this way of perceiving life and opportunity.
We need more of you, Alex Yoder. You're now a big Buddha.
Big Buddha, yeah.
Big Buddha. Well, big Buddha. In closing, what's next? You've got the coffee company, you've got your snowboarding career. That's plenty. But is there anything else on your horizon, either little pet project, little hobby that we don't know about, anything that when you do have some more time, you'll sink your teeth into?
Yeah, I've always been excited about creativity and like somehow creating art, and lately it's really manifested in photography. So I'm just getting nudged by my girlfriend a lot to do like a photo show or a book or something like that, and those are things that are in the back of my mind a lot of the time when I'm working on other projects that are more immediate. But yeah, I'm always kind of nerding out with the small collection of film and digital cameras that I have. And yeah, I still really enjoy the process of documentary filmmaking as well, and storytelling. And I think what's really exciting about Overview is, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to visit places I've never been and sort of, learn new stories from new people, and hopefully share some of those stories through a new platform that, we develop with this company. And um, yeah, it's all really exciting.
It sounds like a perfect combination of a lot of the parts of your life: coffee, documentary film, doing good things for the world, and getting those stories out there. So, all the best and good luck with that. And I wish you and those around you a fantastic 2021, and looking forward to the next time we cross paths.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Thanks so much for having me. It's good to chat, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
You too.